Hi and welcome to another digidemi.com tutorial. In this video, we'll talk about adding keyframes and animating still images in Adobe Premiere Pro. This is also sometimes called the Ken Burns effect, named after the famous documentary filmmaker, and it's such a neat little trick that I think you will love and use all the time. In this lesson, we'll have a look at how to import and use photographs as well as animating them in the timeline. In this section of the timeline, Amanda is talking about the floods and how they impacted the entire site, so let's have a listen.
Flooding is becoming worse, and about 5 years ago this site flooded to epic levels. The flooding was bad enough. The buildings were all submerged and underwater, but the floodwater stayed, and it stayed for weeks. And what that did was it just decimated the entire site. It was touch and go whether Longridge would survive.
Now, as well as this cutaway shot here, and also this one here, let's say you want to see some photographs as well. Let's see how it's done. I'm first going to need to, of course, import those photographs. So just like anything else, I can import the photos by double-clicking anywhere empty inside the project panel. And then inside my Premiere Pro Masterclass Files folder, I'll go into Graphics. And here we have the flood photos. And I'm going to import the whole thing. So on the Mac, I'm going to click on Import without selecting a single image, or on PC, by selecting the folder, you'll be able to see a button here that says Import Folder. So you click on that, which is going to create a bin and import all of those photographs into that bin. So let's just go and double click on that bin to open it up. And let's start with this first one here. So I'm going to double click on this photograph to open that up. And by default, you see that the photograph is set to 5 seconds. So it starts from here and the out point is set to 5 seconds. But because this is a photograph, you can make this as long as you like. You can either do that here. So if I zoom out from this, I can give this any duration I like. So if I just go here, that's half an hour long. And if I press O to set my out point, now my photograph is 32 minutes long. Or I could bring the 5-second photograph into the timeline and extend it afterwards. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press Command Z to undo that length change. So I'll just go back to the beginning and then zoom back in. Now, since this is a photograph, you can see that the audio option here is turned off. If you also look at the timeline, let me make a bit more space for the timeline. You can see there's no audio patch control either, because we just have a picture here. So I'm going to push this back down, and I'll push this to where I want the photograph to start from, let's say here. I'll set my patch to be connected to V2 here, and then I'll do an overwrite edit. That will send that 5-second photograph into my timeline here. The alternative, of course, would be to drag this clip from here onto the timeline. Let me show you that as well. Let me press Command Z to undo that. Then if I click and drag the clip from here, directly onto the timeline, I can drop it anywhere I like. Now you see, because the photograph is set to more of a square-like format rather than a rectangular format, which is what our program panel is showing us because that's the sequence settings, I'm getting some cropping here. So if you look at the top part of this building, for example, on the original image, that's much closer to the edge of the frame in the program panel. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to select this photograph, go to my Effect Controls panel, and if I just zoom out from this one first, so let me just go to here where it says Fit, zoom out to, let's say, 25%. If I then click on the word Motion, you can actually see that's how large my photograph was. So if I make this smaller a little bit, I can get the entire photograph in, but eventually I'm going to start seeing what's underneath. So I'm going to undo that. And similarly, if your original photo was much smaller, let's say that size, you would need to scale it up. And if you scale it up, of course, you're going to start losing quality. So I'd recommend using high resolution images to start with. Hey, it's me. Are you finding this video helpful? If you are, please subscribe to our channel so you can get more content like this. And I'll give you another reason why that's a good idea at the end of the video. For now, let's continue. Now that I have this photograph here, I'll show you how to animate it. Now I'm going to zoom back in, so I'll just go here, select Fit. And what I'll do is to go to the beginning of this photograph, keyframe the position and the scale. Then I'll go forward, let's say to the end. Now if I go right to the end, I actually start seeing the first frame of this clip. So I'm going to press the left arrow once to go back by 1 frame. So this is the last frame of this photograph. I'll then scale this up to, let's say, 115%. Naturally, because we are going above 100% of the original size of the image, we are going to lose some quality, but that's okay for now. And what I have simply here is, if I go back and play, is that the photograph is zooming in a little bit. Now, as it's zooming in, let me just go back to that keyframe by clicking on this button here. As it's zooming in, let's say I want to concentrate the viewer's attention more on this side where the building is. Well, I can click back on the word motion. I can just click and drag this image towards left. Right now it's snapping. Let me just go and turn that snapping off. I'll just go and freely click and drag, and at some point you'll start seeing the clip underneath because I'm going too far with this. Like that. Now that's when I know I went too far, so I'll just go back. Maybe about there. So there's a subtle movement now going from the center up to there. So take a look. If I go back to the beginning, as the image is getting larger, it's also going to move from here to here. That's going to create that zooming in effect. So let me play this.
Flooded to epic levels.
Like that.
The flooding was bad enough. I mean, the buildings were all submerged and underwater.
Now, instead of cutting from this image to Amanda, let's find a different image that we can cut into. Let's say maybe we use this one here. I can also directly drag this clip from here to my timeline to start when this first clip finishes. And if I go here, that's what that clip is. If I now highlight it, I can see its settings. I can go back to the beginning and then just check how big this clip can be. So if I scale this down, it's about the same size as the sequence actually, so I'm going to leave this alone. I'll just keyframe the scale, but I want this to start a little lower, like that. Then keyframe the position. Then I'll go forward towards the end, and then press the left arrow once so I can see the last frame of this clip. And then I'll zoom back in, let's say to 110% this time. And as that's happening, I'm going to push the clip up as well with the second value here going left. Like that. If I now play, you see that this clip is going to start zooming in and going up as well. Because the clip is going up, I'm seeing the bottom part of the clip. Now, if you wanted to add a transition between these two photographs, between these two, you might need to tweak those keyframes. Let me show you what I mean. If I right click between these two, and then apply the default transition, which is the cross dissolve, and if I play this, you see the image in the background. I don't know if you can tell. Let me just make this a little longer actually. I'll select the cross dissolve, extend it a little bit. You see near the end of this clip, the image, the first image here, this one, is going to stop moving. So here, you see the image in the background now stopped moving, and the second one starts. That's because if I click on the first clip here, the transition is applied, and these two keyframes are no longer lining up with the end of the clip. Because remember, when you apply transition, you are revealing handles, so you're adding new additional frames to your clip. So if that happens to you as well, you need to highlight these keyframes and push them all the way to the end of the timeline here. That way, you'll ensure that this transition is happening while the clip is still zooming in. And of course, you'll need to do the same for the beginning of this clip. So if I click on this clip, you'll have to select these two keyframes, then drag them towards the beginning. That ensures that the transition takes place while the clip starts zooming in. So if I go back and play this again, from here, the photo continues to move until it disappears. I'm going to add the transitions at the beginning as well, and the end. I'll select this clip, just check that the keyframes are lined up, they are, and then select this one, and then just check these keyframes are also lined up. So I'm going to play this again from the beginning so you can take a look.
This site flooded to epic levels. The flooding was bad enough. I mean, the buildings were all submerged and underwater, but the floodwater stayed, and it stayed for weeks. And what that did was it just decimated.
And that's how you import and animate photographs. This effect of animating photographs is also called the pan and scan effect, or the Ken Burns effect, named after the famous documentary director.
Before you go, if you want to enter our weekly prize draw, where you could win a free training course that's fully live and interactive and worth over $1,000, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications. That's all you have to do. Thanks again for watching the video, and I'll see you on the next one.